also got this so we're seeing that even manufacturers or something. Process gaps, really kind of standard stuff. I see this a lot of times when I go into a laboratory. They were not maintaining a customer complaint log. They didn't have a list of their various subcontractors being either, these are the subcontractors we use for calibration or the subcontractors we use for special inspection. And they were not identifying the measuring and test equipment that they were using when they were doing their inspections. So, great, you did the inspection, everything passed. What torque wrench did you use? Well, the one that I always use that's in my truck that I know is calibrated. Yeah, 5 years from now, I don't know if that's the case. For some reason, this is another one of those things that I always have to return to. So the problem noted out of this was, typically when I would do an audit report, I would generate a report, it would have an executive summary, and then I would go through and, here's the finding, and or here's the issue, here's the finding, here's the issue, here's the finding, give them a Word document. That's what these guys have been getting from IAS during their certification visits, and it didn't seem to be working for them. So my solution was, okay, I need to give these guys the report in a format that they're going to be able to take and immediately put into use as a checklist so that they can make sure that they get their things corrected. And I need to make sure they understand which ones are elements of their quality manual that need to be corrected and which ones are elements of their process that they need to work on. So basically they got a spreadsheet that basically walked through, what did I find, and it gave them an automatic, it basically was their corrective action plan right there. Okay, the findings are pre-identified. All we have to do now is go through and indicate what our corrective actions are going to be. So it worked out very well for them. It took some reconfiguring on my part for how I was thinking of doing our report, but it was much faster.
Okay. That looks good. Familiar issue already.
All right, US 36. This is a geotechnical investigation and design of bridges, retaining walls, and various structures for the expansion of US 36. And the part of the project I looked at was based in Salt Lake, but US 36 is up in Colorado. So basically, widening 10 miles of the highway. And again, this was one of those cases where Kleinfelder was working to a combination of a JV's QA plan that they had flowed down to us, as well as some of our in-house quality procedures. And I was sent out to the Salt Lake office, again, by a regional manager who called me and said, hey, I'm hearing some complaints from the design engineers in Salt Lake that are doing the roadway design. Could you go there and check it out and see what's going on? Which is the, well, what is it you want me to look at? Well, just find out what's going on. So let's see why people are unhappy. So I went there to find out why people were unhappy. And it became pretty clear. They were having a number of design input issues. The design team was receiving field and lab reports, primarily daily field reports, boring logs, and then laboratory test reports that were incomplete. I think one of the comments given to me from one of the engineers is they held up a lab data sheet and said, this is what I got from the Kleinfelder lab. And it had, at least it had identified the sample and had a couple of data points on it. And they said, this does not give me the information I need to develop my geotechnical design report. Why do I have to use a Kleinfelder lab when I could go subcontract this to someone else and get what I want? And that's, when you hear that from people in your own company, that makes you stand up and go, okay, we've got an issue. The big issue was that the guys in the lab are used to doing materials work, and they're thinking in a very different time or mindset than geotech. So helping them get some understanding of, I understand that to you it might just be laboratory test data, but different clients are going to have a different idea of what kind of data is acceptable. The materials engineer who might just be interested in the pass-fail, not the same necessarily as the geotech that's trying to build a GDR. Lab test status was wildly uncontrolled. We had a subcontractor doing the drilling and some lab testing. They did have at least some anomaly in the field to oversee the drilling. But this was a case where, for example, at one point they were calling around to various laboratories. They used about 9 different Kleinfelder laboratories saying, hey, this is so-and-so from the US 36 project. Did we send you some samples? And can you tell us what tests were assigned? And have you done it? So there was no control of the samples or the test. And then the field and laboratories, they were containing errors by the time they got to the design team. So no one was doing a check of the reports as they were being generated in the field to get them cleaned up and really ready to go. And I don't think I'm pointing out anything unique to my company in this project. I've been on a lot of different projects and I've seen these issues across the board. So what was this giving us in terms of the design team? Well, this helped explain why they were complaining a lot. They were experiencing a lot of delays to get their reports completed. They were trying to meet their time frame to get the GDR to the client engineer. They had to deal with the fact that some of the tests that they had requested were missed or not performed. And so if anyone's familiar, maybe a geotechnical boring of 0 to 50 feet below ground surface, and various sections of that boring have been described for testing, you want to be able to sort of discuss that entire boring in your report. But because tests are missing or have been delayed, you're not able to complete, say, this is the information for this boring. Okay, now I can go on and figure out the information to present for this boring. The data was coming in such a fashion they could not logically and efficiently complete the report.
Wouldn't it make sense to have a mobile lab at the site?
Not necessarily, because it depends on the nature of the testing that's going to be done. So, and even a site there, it's a road site. So the question is, can you get a lab out there somewhere where you can actually drop the power to it? And I'm not sure the full array of the tests they were doing, but I know some of the tests, direct shears or triaxials, they were sending off site, basically because they don't have that kind of equipment at that particular lab. There's also the question of volume. And then, so basically the design team was involved in doing a lot of rework and recheck of data. So they were not getting design inputs that were ready to be used as design inputs. So digging into it, one of the things I noted was the design team was very good at following the QA program that would flow down from the JV and some internal processes that Kleinfelder has for calculations, etc., that they were using to bolster the JV's plan. But when we looked at what was being done to govern field investigation and laboratory testing, no one had bothered to look at the quality requirements that might be necessary for those components of the program. So no one was thinking, oh yes, we have a quality program, until they got to the point of design work. So what we ended up with was a design team that felt that they had the responsibility to correct all of these field and laboratory issues. They were getting resentful. And so what I ended up doing during this audit, again, it was kind of, in a way the audit plan was, go find out why people are unhappy. So I spent a lot of time sitting and listening to the design engineers explain to me their understanding of the processes and where they felt that things were going on. And this is what led us to start looking at the way the design inputs were coming in. And what it showed me was the design team had a very siloed view of their place in the project. From well, we get the design inputs, we do the design, produce the GDR, that goes to the client. No one was thinking about that front end piece of, okay, how are we going to control the inputs and make sure that those are coming in a way that they're ready to be utilized. And even project management hadn't stopped to kind of put that together. So when it came time to do the audit report, I gave them essentially a bunch of process flow charts where we went through and pegged out, okay, well, where are we doing things well and where are we having issues? Because it seemed best to give them a graphic portrayal of what's the entire process that you guys have to deal with from the point of getting a sample out of the ground all the way through producing a GDR. And I'm actually pretty pleased. This was from the phase 1 of this project. I sat in on a conference call. We're getting ready to start the phase 2 of this project. And they've taken this, they've cleaned up the issues, and they even invited me out to do another audit of the project. So that I think is well, it's great for me. So.